In this movie, I'll show you how to lift a color with the eyedropper and then save that color out as a swatch inside the swatches panel. And the great thing about swatches is that they help you establish a color theme, stick with that color theme, and automate the application of color inside your artwork. So the practical upshot is, if you think you're going to use a color more than once, go ahead and save it out as a swatch. Now I've gone ahead and saved my progress as allpathsviewfills.ai, found inside the 12 swatches folder. Bear in mind, if you open up that file, you're going to open up two different windows into the illustration here inside Illustrator. I'm going to switch to my second window, the one that features a zoomed-in outline view, and I'm going to press Control-Y or Command-Y on a Mac in order to switch to the preview mode. You may have to press that keyboard shortcut a couple of times in a row to make it work. Now let's say I want to take this greenish fill inside of this rear rectangle here, and I want to save that out as a swatch. I could go ahead and click on that square using my black arrow tool, but if I do, I'm going to select a group of squares and rectangles that have all kinds of different fills going on. So my better option is to switch to the eyedropper tool, which I can select from the toolbox or by pressing the I key. And then you just have to click inside of that shape in order to lift its fill and stroke. Now we've got a couple of problems going on. One is I just upset all of the selected shapes. Come back to that in a moment. My other problem is that I can't see what's going on inside the color panel. Now, if your color panel is not open on screen, go to the window menu and choose the color command, or you can press the F6 key. My problem, however, is that I can't see the CMYK values, which is the way it works by default. So in order to see the fill and stroke, you need to click on that little up-down arrow icon a couple of times to the left of the word color in order to expand the panel and reveal, in my case, the CMYK values. If you're not seeing the CMYK values, you go over to the flyout menu and choose CMYK. Now, in my case, the fill is active. If it isn't for you, just go ahead and press the X key, which allows you to switch back and forth between the stroke and the fill. And you'll see my CMYK values, that is 30, 10, 40, and 30, respectively. So I've gone ahead and switched the fill color, which is great, but I've messed up all of my selected shapes. So what I need to do is undo this modification twice in a row, and I'll show you why. If you go up to the edit menu, you'll see that the first command is undo color. So if you either choose that command or press Control or Command Z, nothing will happen on screen. Then you have to go up to the edit menu and choose undo eyedropper or press Control Z or Command Z again in order to undo the application of the fill and stroke to the various selected objects. Now you might say, all right, Deke, that first command, undo color, that must have meant the changing of the color inside the color panel. Actually, it doesn't. If I press Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on the Mac in order to deselect my shapes here, you can see that the lifted color remains intact, which is a great thing. So I don't really know what that first command was all about. Anyway, what you want to do now is switch over to the swatches panel, which you can do by going to the window menu and choosing the swatches command. And then you'll see a list of swatches that are saved along with this particular document. So that's another thing to think about. Swatches are document specific, so every document's going to have its own swatches. All right, to create a new swatch, you click on a little page icon at the bottom of the panel, and that brings up the new swatch dialog box. Notice that Illustrator assigns a default name according to the CMYK values. I'm going to change the name to grayish green, let's say. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. Now you can make some modifications to the CMYK values at this point if you want to. I don't need to, so I'll just click OK in order to create that new swatch inside the panel. Now you can assign that color to any object inside the illustration. So for example, I could press the V key to switch back to my black arrow tool, and I could click on this outer dark green circle here. And then I could either assign this swatch to the fill just by clicking on it here inside the swatches panel, or if I wasn't sure my fill was active, I could go up to the control panel, click on the first swatch over here on the left-hand side, and then select my new grayish-green swatch from that list. And by the way, in case you're wondering why my swatches are as big as they are, it's because I went ahead and set them to the medium thumbnail view. All right, anyway, I'm going to click on that swatch to assign it, and the deed is done. So you can see how easy it is to automate the application of color using swatches inside Illustrator. All right, I'm going to press Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on the Mac in order to deselect that circle. Now that's one way to create a swatch inside of Illustrator. You can also create a swatch by dragging and dropping. So let's say I go ahead and grab the eyedropper tool once again. And this time I don't have any shape selected, so I'll just go ahead and click inside of this yellow square in order to lift that shade of yellow as the fill color. By the way, you're also lifting the stroke color. So in my case, I lifted the shade of brown. Now, there's two ways to create swatches by dragging and dropping inside of Illustrator. One is to drag and drop the fill or stroke swatch from the bottom of the toolbox. Now, I can't see mine because I have a small screen. So I'll expand my toolbox to the two-column display, and then I'll go ahead and drag the fill color, that yellow swatch there, and drop it inside the swatches panel. And so that's another way to create a swatch. In this case, it's going to get auto name. And we see the CMYK values as well as the 1 to indicate that this is the first swatch with those particular values. All right, I'm going to press Control-Z or Command-Z on a Mac to undo that new swatch. The other way to work is to switch back over to the color panel and drag and drop from there. Now, if you're working from one of the default workspaces, such as Essentials, then the color and swatches panels are in different locations, so you can easily drag and drop between them. Way back when, at the beginning of the fundamentals course, I suggested you set up a one-on-one workspace, and it features color, color guide, and swatches all grouped together. So if you're working that way, you can still perform a drag and drop from the color panel as follows. You go ahead and drag either the fill or stroke swatch, and you drag it up to the word swatches. You wait for Illustrator to switch over to the swatches panel, and then you go ahead and move your cursor back into the panel. Now, the advantage of performing a drag and drop, and you might think, well, gosh, it's so much easier just to click on that little page icon to create a swatch after all. The advantage of performing a drag and drop is that you can drop the swatch anywhere in the list that you like. So I could put it at the front of my custom colors like so in order to move that yellow swatch to this location. And then I would double click on it in order to rename the swatch because I want to call mine Aztec Gold, and then click OK in order to create that new swatch. And that, folks, is how you lift fill and stroke attributes using the eyedropper, as well as save out a color as a custom swatch.